When are we going to get back to we? On some level, maybe we've never been there. Maybe it's a developmental trajectory that we are discovering together as a collective. Many of us want to be of assistance in our changing world, but the map isn't there. We have to create it, but we don't know what it is. What if we can now also participate? What if we must participate? What if we are the ones we've been waiting for? What if it's up to us whether we get the new story or not?
Welcome to America Lost and Found. My name is Jannel Rapp. My sister Gina Boss disappeared on October 17th, 2000. In the 25 years since she vanished, her disappearance taught me that I did not have to miss out on my own life because I miss her. Though America Lost and Found has its inspirational roots in stories of missing persons, the grief their families face, their lessons, and their triumphs, this show is not just about missing. If we are breathing, we face loss, but it doesn't have to define us. We feature guests who have learned to use loss instead of having loss use them. Our guests share tools that help them navigate their loss. Some will resonate with you, some may not. Our hope is that as you watch, like, and subscribe, you will not only gain tools for life, but you will be inspired to turn your loss into beautiful. I am excited about this guest, Reverend Shara Moscinska. Her current role, Minister and Chief Evolutionary Officer at Unity of Tustin. She leads through Unity We Space, participatory spirituality, and evolutionary leadership. She's a former psychotherapist, behavioral health director, consultant, and a national trainer. She has experience with indigenous communities, Center for Action and Contemplation, Integral Movement. Unity Worldwide Ministries board member. Her strengths are she's a bridge builder for an evolving spiritual future. She's known for clarity, compassion, and innovation. She's a deep listener with practical insights for thriving spiritual communities. She champions a we-centric leadership model. Love that. She is focused on creating healthy systems. She's committed to building the more beautiful world we all know is possible. Wow, there's so much good in there. You got me tripped up. I've been thinking lately about the we, me thing. I've been thinking about when will humanity hit their bottom? Because we're just so me that we're not thinking about our community, our globe, what's going on with others. When are we going to get back to we? And so I love that. And then also the listening. I feel like our lost art is listening, because that's what people need. They need for us to listen to them. They need to be heard. And those two things in your bio are like, explosive for me, especially this week. I started a few different songs this week, but one of them was really about when will we hit our bottom? When will we realize that it's not about me? It's about we. We need to make our decisions on we.
Wow, Jannel, what a big place to start. Thank you for having this show. Thank you for having me be on this show. And, I know the focus is on loss. And really, when we're looking, when are we going to get back to we? On some level, maybe we've never been there. Maybe it's a developmental trajectory that we are discovering together as a collective. So, on one level, I imagine on this show, we talk a lot about our individual journey and our individual evolution and how we can use loss as an inevitable piece of the journey of evolution, of growth into love and wholeness. And perhaps we're seeing this happen on a global level too. That perhaps some of these disruptions that are so much greater than most of us have ever experienced in our lifetimes are part of a map of transformation that we know individually. We know that there is this process of order, status quo, disorder into the dark night of the soul, and then reorder of a higher order, the resurrection, the new life, the new story. We might even have faith in this because we've survived it enough times. We know from nature that there are seasons, and winter and all the leaves falling and leaving us exposed and bare is one of them. And perhaps these maps and these rhythms apply to us as collectives as well. And in that, while we may not know what to do or how to be in relationship to what is or might be perceived as deep loss, deep collective global human loss, I can tether my hope to the patterns that I've experienced and that I see, and believe that something is emerging as well. You know, in spiritual circles, there's often been the sense if enough individuals get it, they will be the 100th monkey syndrome, where we will all wake up. And I don't know if that's happened. And perhaps the missing piece is that we do still have to start with self, because that's what we have control over. And we do have to individually find the grace and grit to continue to move into greater expressions of love and wholeness ourselves. But what's happening is I believe it's getting clear we need to find each other. And there's a connectedness that has to happen to truly up-level the whole system. And maybe that's the me to we. We take our sincerely striving me's, and whether that means an individual organization or a person, but we need to network. You know, I like to say this is the mycelium age. We talk about mycelium networks, the communication systems underground that let the trees know when to contract their sap when the fire comes, and when to let it go. And, you know, we see this with the rise of psychedelic use, literal mushrooms being a conduit for people to have a glimpse of the reality that transcends the individual. We see this with AI, where it's a collective network of wisdom or not wisdom coming forward in a much almost mind-blowingly, mysteriously effective way. We see this with the new norm of prototyping and scaling what works as how to be effective. So I think the hope is that we can start to prototype and scale how we can be as local, beyond local, global, cosmic communities.
Wow, that's so good. That is so good. I had to come to that conclusion. It took me a while because I tend to go global with things when something happens. When my sister disappeared, I realized all these other people are missing. And my eyes have been closed to that before, and my eyes were open to all these other families that were suffering. So when this started to happen in our world, and it became more and more aware with what's going on in our politics and just overall that big stirring of the pot of all kinds of things in our country, and which affects the rest of the world. I felt like I have to do something. I have to do something. What can I do? And I was so freaked out about not being able to do anything that I felt powerless. I was super depressed. I'd come home every night and just barely be able to function. And people, I kept hearing, work on you. But I couldn't take that in because I had to do something. I had to stop this. Like I have any power, And then I finally started, I just surrendered to, it is really me. I have to start with me, and I have to look at me, and I have to think about my neighbors and the people that are closest to me and whoever I encounter. And you're just emphasizing the importance of that.
Yeah, it's such a paradox. I mean, you are not alone. I think what's so difficult is so many of us want to be of assistance in our changing world, but the map isn't there. We have to create it, but we don't know what it is. The old way, we're in liminal times. Liminal times, you could say we're going through a global human dark night of the soul. And that's when the old ways are crumbling down, but the new ways have not emerged yet. And we are in the wilderness of no reference points. And if we do not have the support or the capacity or the maturity or the interdependence to tolerate that, we are going to cling to certainty. And that's generally going to look like black or white, yes or no, polarization. So part of the polarization is because that capacity to handle the unknown needs to be cultivated. And we are liminally, tolerantly poor. We're young. We're infants collectively. So it's so much easier to go back to the old familiar shoe that fits, that's falling apart, than the new way of walking that has no guarantees, that we don't know. So I do like to insert in these types of conversations, first of all, a lot of compassion and a healthy dose of humility. Like, let's all take a nice bite of humble pie. Think of the last time you really regretted showing up the way you did. Because one of my favorite sayings is, no one is smart enough to be 100% wrong. So even with what you or I might look at with judgment, someone else is looking at with delight. And someone else is looking at it with hope. So there are perhaps there's balance. How do we maintain the warrior, the obedient one, the one that wants results, and the one that wants us to all get along? It's complicated. And I put that out there because I think it actually tempers the paralysis we feel. When we can at least start to hold more loosely our perspective as being so right that we can barely tolerate what we see. So I don't quite know if you're following that, if that's making sense. But, there's the Einsteinian viewpoint that we cannot solve problems on the level they are created. So how do we get beyond the polarity we want to transcend? And part of it is by not seeing it as with polarity lenses ourselves. Part of it is, yes, do what's in front of you from the mystical Christianity point of view that I sometimes saturate in. The kingdom of God is at hand. At any moment, life will present us with the opportunity to show up as our best self. but we may be more successful in having that as a center of gravity if we are doing service and being generous with our funds with things that matter, and making sure we go dancing and stay with a hobby we love and see our children with the eyes of hope while life brings us to our knees. It all belongs.
Mm-hmm. It's all part of it.
It's all part of it. In Unity, we say to our youth, but I think it's better for the adults, actually, there's not a spot where God is not.
That's good. That's good. I like that we can experience all of it. Like it's all life. So even though we feel like we're in this spot, that's our life. That's life right now. We get to experience that. And when you talk about perspective, that's what's hard to change sometimes, if we're just mired in the one that we've had for a long time. But just changing it slightly can open our minds to something different. And that's what you're saying, is that then we can enjoy our children. Then we can be part of the community. Then we can, be more than just, oh, this is happening.
Yes.
And that's all that's on our mind. And that's all our only function.
Yes, I think changing perspective, but also adding to perspectives. Like a capacity of wisdom is the capacity to hold multiple perspectives at the same time. Let's try to confuse ourselves. Some people have a interpretation of the Bible as the literal truth. Yet we have 4 Gospels who talk about the same thing with different accounts. So one could argue that the whole purpose of the Bible is to show there is no one right perspective, because we have contradictions embedded in the document itself, so it cannot be inerrant. And can we do that with our own selves? Can we? Because we are part of humanity. So if you see, if I am that, if I am you, if our holiness has a oneness to it, then your perspective also has parts of the truth. And I think it's that. I think it's the decentering. If everyone could just see it the way I did, the world would work. That type of decentering then gets us out of righteousness into curiosity, and from curiosity, we actually can make a difference, because now we're coming from a different source. We're not coming from, I need to shake you into waking up. We're coming from, I am inspired to create the new story from this action right here, right now. Because, that's the problem when we look out at the world and we feel overwhelmed. We may not have evolved to tolerate seeing what is happening all over the world without anything to do with it. That is a new experience.
That's true.
And I've always thought, this is just an aside, like, what are we doing culturally? I think, in millions of years, when the future species of whatever comes and does their anthropological look at our age, they'll say these humans were so curious. They spent so much of their collective life gathering all of the worst stories of humanity. They went out of their way to look under the stones where they are the worst, and then they would broadcast them 24/7 to everybody. And it'll be like this interesting stage. That might be the bottom. He said, when are we going to reach bottom? The future anthropologists might be like, they were at their bottom. This is what they did for entertainment, and we look at Colosseums and we might judge that, right? But we may not know how to handle all of that. So we can have compassion for ourselves, that that this level of exposure to the worst of who we are might actually breed a bit of paralysis. And yet, what are the antidotes? And can we move into those antidotes? Because what we most need, from my point of view, is not for someone else to get it or wake up. Even if what we didn't like fell apart tomorrow, okay? Let's say there's this dynamic going on. Oh, they're going to finally see what's going on, and this is all going to fall apart. What is now being offered? And what I would say, and where you started, moving from me to we, what wants and needs to be offered is a bigger story. That Charles Eisenstein, the story of the more beautiful world we all know is possible, that story of we, that story of a sense of self that can care beyond attachment. And as we cultivate that, now we can start getting excited about something. That's, if there's anything missing in the world right now, from what I can see, or what I'm yearning for, what my heart is burning for, I want to be excited about what's emerging, what's possible. I want the new story. So the question is, what new story is arising, and how can each of us participate in it? And from where? And how can we participate it from wholeness, from love, so our expression is feeding the consciousness we want to see in the world?
I'm loving that. I'm really loving that. So much of what you said is just such a unique perspective for me, and especially to look at people coming, thousands of years from now studying us and seeing that. They wanted to hit their bottom. They were seeking it. They were diving right in.
Wow. Oh, I've never thought of it that way, Jannel. So I'll just kind of say, like when, Jesus is throwing off over the money changer's table and all of that stuff, there's this fulfillment of old prophecy. And you could almost say he was provoking it so that he can show that the worst thing that can happen to someone, like being unjustly murdered, when done with love and forgiveness, resurrects into eternal love. Like some sort of, not even that he knew that was even going to happen, but he had faith in this blueprint of resurrection after loss. And when you use those words, like they wanted it, what if our collective unconscious knows that we need to kill separation and hyper-individuality so that we can, and it won't, even like our own individual loss and grief, you can never tell someone when they're being cut to their knees that a new life that you've never dreamed possible is on the other side. That is dishonoring of the magnitude of the lostness. And yet, we might know like we know that's true for ourselves and that other person. Well, maybe these anthropologists of the future, which in some sort of, cosmic time continuum already exist, they might know that for us. And this is all play, kind of imagination, but it's given me a bit of comfort right now.
That's good. That's really good.
I had a teacher that said, we
hopefully
make up...
it gives someone some comfort out there, who's listening.
But I had a teacher who said, we make up stories all the time, and we have emotional reactions to them and everything.
That's true.
Why not make up the very best story that you can imagine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're digging to our bottom because we don't want anyone else to ever have to go there again.
Ooh. Oh, my goodness. That's so gracious.
Like we're sacrificing.
I know. We're doing that tonight.
We're so awesome.
I know, my ego. You're blowing up my ego right now. I'm taking one for the human team in the fullness of time, right? I came in this era.
Just for this moment, look at us. We must be the strong ones. Oh, my goodness. But yeah, I was talking to you before we started about a really difficult time in my life.
Yes.
And I had difficult times prior to that seemed insurmountable. But that particular time was even more so, to the point where I felt like I was a shell of my former self, just walking around a shell. And I remember when it happened, I went in my backyard, I opened my arms, and I said, I don't know what this is, but something good is going to come out of it. And I just held it, as wide as I could. So that reminds me of this moment right now, what we're talking about. That what is the good that is going to come from all of this stirring of the pot, all of this digging down to the dirtiest of dirt of humanity? What is the good?
What is the good? And we weren't rolling, but when you told me that story, you told me that it was one of the hardest parts of your life, where you were in survival mode, like didn't even have almost a consciousness of how you were showing up. And yet you found out recently that one of your students told you that you were one of the most inspiring teachers in his life at that point where you felt you were offering nothing. Yeah. So we don't know our impact.
No, we don't.
We don't know our impact by surrendering and accepting. And I love what you did, Jannel. For those of you who aren't watching the YouTube, Jannel put her arms right out. And really, in a sense, you made the sign of the cross. And the mystical cross is that alchemy. It's the alchemy where the vertical line, our body, is that connection of heaven and earth. That connection, remembrance, and recognition that we and the transcendent, because not everyone might have a different belief system, and mine is one heart, one God, many paths. So whatever speaks to the listener is really what I encourage. But you can even say, for a humanist, it could be something above self-interest. For a spiritual person, it could be a connection with an intelligent energy that moves towards wholeness and undergirds all of life. But that is that vertical axis. And we are that. We have, if you can subscribe to this cosmology at all, we have the capacity to bring forward the transcendent, the larger, what doesn't yet exist. Why we see evolution in humanity and the world is because something does come forward from nothing in its mystery, whether it comes from complexity or grace or from the moment. We have arisings where as people, as humans, we know something we didn't know before. Something comes online that is part of this mystery of the vertical transcendence. But then when you put your arms out horizontally, that is our connection to the world. We may be here in order to source this energy of wholeness, of generativity, of hope into the world. And where that vertical and that horizontal line meets is our heart. That's our nexus point. And our heart is a spiritual organ. It's different than the mind. And that's the other thing about this weird cultural broadcasting that we do. It has inherent and embedded in it separation. But the heart has inherent and embedded in it connection and coherence and love. Love as field from which all arises, including our own love heart. And that is our offering, our hope. We can look back and see a whole evolution of consciousness where new ways of being human come online at different eras of our development. Why would we think we're at the end of that? I don't know. There's a famous cartoon of a staircase with every stair you've got, like, from the ape to the Neanderthal to the humanoid to the big human, and then the modern human. There's a whole bunch more stairs. And the modern human says, I didn't realize there were still more stairs. So, what if this me to we, what if this cosmic dark night of the soul is part of who we're becoming on the next stair?
That is something that I haven't put a lot of thought in. My mind, maybe it's just because, societally we think this way. We want it to be back like it used to be, or we want that, so we're not thinking forward. And so much of what you're saying is opening my mind to, what if this is something different? It isn't like we're going to find the old model and recreate it. That it's actually a new way of living, a better way of living, that we've opened this, we're cleaning it out, we're getting the dust out, the cobwebs, the bricks, the whatever's broken, and then it's this new thing. And I was also reminded that, people say that men talk about knowing and women talk about feeling. But what if we had,
The heart talks about both.
The heart does know.
The heart knows
things.
The mind's in the heart, and the feelings are in the heart. It's the both and. And then the third way that comes from the integration of what seems different, incommensurable, polarized. That's what brings us forward.
Chills again. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And I love what you said, and yet it's so easy and tempting to look back for the solutions. But when I look at history and consciousness, I don't see us going backwards and staying there. We do go backwards. We can regress all the time. Sure. History does repeat itself. But, in sewing, there's the back stitch. You go two spaces back, 4 forward, 2 spaces back, 4 forward. And it takes longer, needs patience, but it makes for a stronger stitch. But, the capacities, we can participate in the capacities that help us not have to go backwards. And I do think having an inspiring new story is part of it. So even this conversation, it doesn't really have a practical outcome, but it can give us a bit of an antidote to hopelessness. And that might motivate us. And we can also, this is a big question for me. Is this inevitable if I really believe that creation moves towards wholeness? Or does it matter what we do individually and collectively, and or both, or something completely different? But if we look at the development of human consciousness, there was a time on this planet where there was no life. as far as we know. And then there was life, and creating something from nothing. Then we had life plus consciousness. Now we have consciousness. And these are mysteries, where they come from. We don't know. And then we have life plus consciousness plus self-consciousness. And we've kind of get modern humans on some level. And you can use your own word, but it's almost like maybe it's now life plus consciousness plus self-consciousness plus God consciousness is coming online, or love consciousness, living love, or wholeness consciousness, or our we consciousness. Something that has us participate. Maybe what we do matters to get to that next stair, where in the past, it kind of just happened as part of unfolding. But now that we're self-aware, what if we can now also participate? What if we must participate? What if we are the ones we've been waiting for? What if it's up to us whether we get the new story or not? These are things I don't know.
I think you're onto something. I think that is it. It is up to us.
I was just kind of curious. When you started, I actually saw legitimate hopelessness in your face.
Yeah.
And what are you experiencing now?
I feel like, perspective and, giving yourself permission to have different perspectives, opening your mind and heart and life, thinking about the opportunities that are here instead of the destruction so much. It just depends on how we look at it. And it really frees me up to think about, especially when you brought in those people thousands of years from now looking at it, I was like, whoa, that did it for me. That moment where you had that thought, and it's like, yeah, I think that's something. And we don't really think that we're going to evolve anymore, right? That's not something in our consciousness. We're already there. We made it.
Yes.
We're modern. But I have thought, the kids that are coming out now, that, there's a lot of autism. We don't know why. Yeah. Are they more evolved than we are?
Yeah.
And this is because at some point there were new beings coming out, and the rest of them were looking at them like, there's something wrong with that one.
Yes.
And that became the next model. But we didn't live then, so we don't know what that was like. But I've thought of that. And so now with this talk, I'm like, okay. This gives me a little hope.
And curiosity rather than certainty.
Curiosity, I love that better than question.
Or even question.
Because when you live in the question, it feels so, but curiosity,
nice.
It feels so expansive.
Yes.
So I like that word.
In our Unity New Thought teachings, we have a saying that evolution is forward. So yes, we have to be curious about what the youth is bringing forward, and curious not to dismiss it as aberration. So I'm very curious, like a lot of gender expansiveness among our youth. What might be happening? And I run in spiritual circles. So here we all are, quote unquote, chasing non-duality. And these kids from life itself with their I am consciousness, which in my tradition is our power of being a co-creator on the planet. I am. They're saying, I am non-binary. I mean, shouldn't we be kind of like fascinated and maybe even hopeful? Think of how much war and suffering has been created because of gender binaries. So it's complicated because there's always overreach. We need to have, best practice protocols and all sorts of things. But there's also a lot of pain that happens, especially for outspoken adolescent girls, They are known to suffer greatly as preteens and teens because the culture often doesn't give them a place to truly show up in their sovereignty. So what if this is a correction so there can be more expressions of sovereignty that are complex and rich and beautiful? And then even in culture itself, like some other things that are trending are like plant medicine journeys and psychedelics. Like, why now? That's what I'm always curious. Before dismissing or judging something as good or bad, what wants to come forward? And I do think, I hear a lot of people, they find out I'm a minister. And they tell me, especially younger people, I was a complete atheist until I had my medicine journey, and now I know the transcendent is real. And I'm wondering if maybe we have a collective need for a glimpse of what the new story could be. So we have some hope of that next stair. So we have a hope on what we are working towards. And then, of course, AI is the other thing.
Yeah.
And you can't even say why now, because now is already different because it's changing and evolving so quickly.
Right.
But yeah, it is something about, maybe, anything's possible from that level of emergent complexity with the level of quickness that it is learning. So yeah, we are in interesting times. May you live in interesting times.
Yeah, we are. So many thoughts came to mind I should be taking notes. I often think that when I'm sitting here, I should be taking notes, but then maybe it looks like I'm not paying attention. And now I've lost it all. I want to say so many things. There was a lot in there.
I take a moment, take a pause, because sometimes I find the structure of communication is part of polarization. And when we just stay with the moment and then let what shows up to lead the speech, even if we do this with friends or do this in a heated conversation, now we can bypass all that narrative and triggering story. And sometimes what emerge, I'm going to trust that's what comes forward, and it sometimes matters most. So just take a moment and let it all let's go into the silence and see what comes up.
I think pausing is so important, and even the pause in music. Without the pauses or without the little breaks in music and the rhythm, it would all sound the same. Because we only have 12 notes to work with, 12 tones, at least currently. There are actually many more, but that's what we use. So it was the polarization. It was the polarization that you were talking about. And that the separation there is maybe the key to the evolution. Because as these new beings are born, and they're coming out with their own way of being, because I believe that we're all born unique and creative, and we're here for a reason, and we have a purpose. And in order to fulfill that, we have to just be. We don't fit in a box. Nobody fits in a box. Societies try to put us in a box, but no one fits. And the polarization are the people saying, we need to fit in a box. You don't fit in my box, and you don't fit in my box. There's all these boxes in between that are being ignored. But those people saying, you don't fit in my box and you don't fit in my box on either side, they don't fit in a box either. And they're upset about that.
Yes.
So they found a box they can kind of fit in. And because they found it, they want to be firmly in there because I finally found my box. And it's scary to be in the question.
Yeah.
That's why I love curiosity.
Yes.
Curiosity gives you expansion.
Yes.
So that, wow, just there's so much meat in this conversation.
And
your words.
And I love that you brought in the pause. Because whenever I have an interpersonal problem or something at work, I've been taught it's almost always the container. Go to the container first. And, look at what the anthropologists are going to see, from those future anthropologists. They're going to see, and I'm thinking of creating a podcast studio myself, so this is no judgment. Podcasts, 24-hour news, all sorts of media, reel after reel after reel. There's no pause. If you and I just sit in the silence, you'd be like, how much could our listeners tolerate? Right? Like, because it's not the convention. Mm. But then where does the new come from without the pause? Where does the music come from, the new song without the pause? We don't even breathe without the pause.
So true. And since the show is about surviving our losses, sometimes our losses are a pause for us.
Yeah.
And they become a place where we can really grow.
Oh, I feel that. I do. What I really feel is, I can very much identify with getting co-opted, sucked in to the eddy of life, that whirlwind. And it's often loss that spits me out on the bank, where then I can even recognize I was in the eddy, the whirlwind. Yeah.
So that's the point where grief and loss becomes a gift.
Yeah.
Because it gives you the truth. It shows you a piece of the truth you weren't paying attention to.
Yes. We have the perspective of the still point. We can see. We can be the witness.
Yeah.
We can't do that in the eddy, in the flow, even in the fast flow. We need both.
Yeah, I'm not sure why I'm mentioning this, but my very good friend passed away about 1.5 years ago. And at the memorial, I remember I could see or I could hear, but I couldn't do both because it was too much for my senses to take it all in. So I think when we're in grief, maybe we get very tunneled, and we can't take it all in. It's too much. And earlier, before we started, which I thought was so profound that you said this, when my sister disappeared 25 years ago, I saw my niece and nephews, and that's what I locked into. And what did you say? You said other people in the family probably locked into other aspects, and you carried the grief where you could. You carried it together. That was so profound to me because we can't carry it all. And in that moment, at the memorial, it was so devastating for my physical being that it was the first time in my life I couldn't, there were visuals and there were people speaking. I could only take one or the other. I could switch between, but I couldn't do them both at once. And it was the first time in my life I'd ever experienced that. And I went, that is so interesting. It was also horrible, but, it was hard to walk through. But it happened. Yes. It was real.
Wow, Jannel, that brings up a lot for me. One, just iterating that in a way you were fortunate that you had some we grief. You were part of a collective because, yes, in the acute grief, there may be no witness, actually. That might come later because we are just overwhelmed. So you took on, what about her children? Your parents took on a different focus of the grief. Mm-hmm. And together you were able to metabolize it as an organism.
Mm. Wow. So is that what we're doing
that's
right now in the world?
Is that what we're doing?
Are we sharing it, and that we need to do our part? That brings us back to the individual doing the work.
Yes. How? Because we are losing a lot of what is familiar. Wherever you are on that polarized political spectrum, wherever you are right now, you are losing what is familiar to you, what you hold dear. So there is a collective grief process. We're in it acutely, so we can't necessarily be the witness. We're the participants of its metabolization. And as a collective, human, global, organizational, governmental, national, global organism, whichever scale you're looking at this in, we are all metabolizing it as an organism.
Mm. Now that's some perspective.
It is. And look, that emerged right here with us. And it gives me hope, because then maybe my part, where I am so aware of how insufficient it is, maybe it's enough. Tell me what you're experiencing.
Well, that's the part that, was so hard for me at first, is that I couldn't do anything. There was nothing I could do. But to know that just by working on my little world, that it's enough, And if I work on mine, then I give someone else permission to work on theirs. Mm. If I don't work on mine, and the people around me see I'm not working on mine, I'm just crazy. Mm. They're going to be crazy too, or they're going to want to stay away from me. Mm. So I will repel them. Mm. Mm. So I work on me. Mm. I work on me. Mm. And that's enough, which is hard to imagine that it's enough. But
yeah, so we started also talking about perspective.
Yes.
So it's also the perspective of scale. There's something about what you and I have done right here, where we've brought in the scale of the future anthropologist and the scale of evolution and the scale of us moving into a we, which means we are a human organism or a creation organism. That now we're all a cell in this organism, so we just have to be our cell and know that there's a coordination. Maybe that's the cosmology or the faith or the wholeness or the love, that coherence of love, that relational quality of the heart coherence. So that in a way unknown to us, we are becoming the living organism of the new we.
I think that's a great way to end.
I think it's a great new story.
It is a really good news story.
We just wrote a good story with pauses. Because from the pause, the story that comes from the pause. Thank you, Jannel.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. There's a book in that. That's the title of a book right there. Or a sermon. Something. A song. Something important. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate it.
I appreciate the invitation. And I appreciate the discovery together.
Yes.
The we creation.
Reverend Shara, thank you so much. Talk about America Lost and Found. Whoa. That was America Lost and Found like you've never heard. Thank you so much.